She signed away 9 months of her life to save her brother. He paid $750,000 for something money can't buy. It was supposed to be simple, a transaction, a contract. But the moment their eyes met across that dining table, everything changed. What happens when a woman with nothing to lose meets a man who's forgotten how to feel? You're about to find out. Don't go anywhere. The scent hit her before anything else. Sandalwood and something darker like smoke trapped in velvet. Elena Vance stood frozen at the entrance of the private dining room, her worn sneakers sinking into carpet that probably cost more than her entire apartment. She didn't belong here. Every cell in her body screamed it. But the number on the hospital bill screamed louder. The room was intimate, suffocating in its elegance. A single table draped in white linen. Candles casting shadows that danced like co-conspirators. And at the head of it all, watching her with eyes the color of winter frost, sat Damien Ashford. He didn't stand when she entered, didn't smile, simply observed her the way one might study a rare specimen pinned under glass. His black suit absorbed the candlelight, making him look less like a man and more like a void shaped into something dangerously beautiful. "You're late," he said. Not an accusation, a fact. Traffic. A lie. She'd sat in her car for 20 minutes, hands shaking against the steering wheel, Maya's voice still ringing in her ears from their phone call. "Girl, this is how horror movies start. Rich white man, fancy hotel, weird proposal. I'm tracking your location, and I will call the cops if you don't text me every hour." Elena forced her feet forward. One step, another. The dress code had said formal, and she'd laughed at that, bitterly, standing in front of her closet full of thrift store finds. She'd settled on a black dress she'd worn to her mother's funeral 3 years ago. It still fit. Grief had a way of keeping weight off. Damien's gaze traveled down her body, slow and deliberate, and she felt it like fingertips against her skin. Not sexual exactly. Assessing, calculating. When his eyes returned to hers, something flickered in them. Satisfaction, maybe. Or hunger. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please," Elena added, not moving. A pause. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile but close. "Please," he repeated, and the word sounded foreign on his tongue, like a language he'd learned but rarely used. She sat. A waiter materialized from nowhere, pouring wine she hadn't asked for, disappearing just as silently. The hotel staff moved like ghosts here, she'd noticed. Trained to be invisible, to see nothing, to remember less. "You read the contract," Damien said. Not a question. "I read it." "And?" Elena's fingers found the thin silver chain around her neck, her mother's pendant. She pressed the small key against her palm until it bit into her skin. "And I have questions." He leaned back, swirling wine in his glass without drinking. "I'd be disappointed if you didn't. The medical clause, Section 12. It says I'll be monitored throughout the pregnancy. What does monitored mean, exactly?" "Regular checkups, nutritional oversight. Standard procedure for a high-risk arrangement." "High risk?" "Any pregnancy carries risk, Miss Vance. I'm simply ensuring the best possible outcome." She didn't like the way he said outcome, like the baby was a product, a deliverable. But then again, wasn't that exactly what this was? A transaction. Her body for his money. 9 months of her life for her brother's chance at survival. Johnny. 19 years old with a heart that was giving up on him. Surgery that insurance wouldn't cover because of some pre-existing condition bullshit. $600,000 standing between him and a normal life. She'd sold everything. Worked 3 jobs. Started a GoFundMe that raised $8,000 before the internet moved on to the next tragedy. And then, through channels she still didn't fully understand, she'd received a cream-colored envelope with her name written in ink that probably cost more than her rent. A proposition, the letter had said. One that could solve all her problems. Section 18, Elena continued, forcing her voice steady. Residency requirements. You want me to live here, in this hotel, for the entire pregnancy? Correct. Why? Damien set down his glass. The candlelight caught the scar through his eyebrow, a thin white line that made him look almost human. Almost. Control, Miss Vance. I need to ensure the safety of my investment. Investment? She tasted the word like poison. That's what this is to you. Isn't it what it is to you? He tilted his head, studying her. You need money. I need an heir. We're both using each other. The only difference is I'm honest about it. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to throw the wine in his face and walk out and never look back. But then her phone buzzed in her purse, and she knew without looking that it was the hospital. Another bill. Another deadline. Another piece of her brother's future slipping away. The compensation, she said quietly. It's guaranteed, even if something goes wrong. Something shifted in Damien's expression, a crack in the marble. Nothing will go wrong. But if it does? He was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and produced a pen, sliding it across the table toward her. Section 23. Subsection B. Read it again. She did. The words blurred together, but the numbers were clear. $750,000, deposited in full upon confirmation of pregnancy, regardless of outcome. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why would you guarantee payment even if I miscarry? Even if the pregnancy fails? That's not how these arrangements work. Damien's jaw tightened. That tell again. The one that said she'd touched something he didn't want touched. Because I don't fail, Miss Vance, and neither will you. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it wrapped around her throat like a silk noose. I want my friend to visit, Elena said suddenly. Maya, she's not negotiable. The contract states, I don't care what the contract states. She visits or I walk. Another pause, longer this time. Damien's eyes never left hers, and Elena felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, wind howling, waiting to see if she'd be pushed or if she'd jump. Once a week, he said finally. Supervised. Unsupervised. You're negotiating. I'm surviving. That almost smile again. This time, it reached his eyes, and Elena's stomach dropped because she recognized that look. She'd seen it on predators in nature documentaries right before they pounced. I think I'm going to enjoy this arrangement, Elena. It was the first time he'd used her first name. The sound of it in his voice, low and intimate, made her skin prickle with something she refused to name. She picked up the pen. Her phone buzzed again. The hospital. Johnny. The weight of everything she couldn't afford pressing down on her chest. Elena signed her name on the dotted line. Damien watched her, and for just a moment, so brief she might have imagined it, his mask slipped. Beneath the control, beneath the cold calculation, she saw something raw. Something almost like relief. Or maybe if she were being fanciful, something like longing. Then it was gone, and he was standing, buttoning his jacket with precise movements. A car will collect you tomorrow at noon. Bring only what you need. Everything else will be provided. Including my prison uniform? He paused at the door, looking back at her over his shoulder. The candlelight carved shadows into his face, turning him into something from a darker fairy tale. White, he said softly. I think you'd look beautiful in white. Then he was gone, and Elena was alone with the ghost of his cologne and the sinking realization that she'd just signed away far more than 9 months of her life. Her phone rang. Maya's name lit up the screen. Please tell me you didn't sign it, Maya said before Elena could speak. Elena stared at the contract in front of her, her signature still wet on the page. I signed it. Silence. Then, I'm tracking your location right now. I'm coming to get you. Maya, no, this is insane, Elena. The man is basically buying you. Do you understand that? He's buying you. He's buying my uterus. There's a difference. Is there? Because the way you described him, the way he looks at you. Maya's voice cracked. Girl, I love you. You know I love you. But this is a mistake. Elena closed her eyes. The scent of sandalwood still clung to the air, wrapping around her like a promise. Or a warning. "Johnny needs the surgery," she whispered. "And this is the only way. There has to be another way." "There isn't." Maya was quiet for so long that Elena thought she'd hung up. Then softly, "I'm visiting you every week. I don't care what that contract says. I'm coming, and I'm bringing pepper spray, and if that man so much as looks at you wrong, I'm stabbing him with my earring." Despite everything, Elena laughed. It came out watery, more sob than sound, but it was real. "I negotiated visitation rights, once a week, unsupervised. That's my girl." A pause. "He actually agreed to that?" "He did." Maya's tone shifted, thoughtful now. "That's interesting. Billionaires don't negotiate. They dictate. So why did he give in to you?" Elena didn't have an answer, but as she gathered her things and walked out of the hotel into the cold night air, she couldn't shake the feeling that the question mattered more than she understood. Why had he given in? What did Damien Ashford really want from her? And why, beneath the fear and the desperation and the weight of her impossible choice, did some small, traitorous part of her want to find out? The suite was larger than her entire apartment. Elena stood in the doorway, her single suitcase looking pathetic against the ocean of marble and silk that stretched before her. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city skyline, glittering like scattered diamonds against the afternoon gray. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, dressed in linen so white they seemed to glow. And there, laid across the pristine covers like an offering, was the dress. White, of course. Silk that caught the light like water, with a neckline that would bare her shoulders and a back that didn't exist at all. Beside it, a note in handwriting she was beginning to recognize. Elegant. Controlled. Like him. Dinner at 8. Wear this. No signature. He didn't need one. Elena's phone buzzed. Maya, for the 10th time since noon. "Tell me you're not actually wearing it," Maya said the moment Elena answered. "Hello to you too." "Elena." She picked up the dress, letting the fabric slide through her fingers. It felt like sin, like surrender. "It's just a dress." "It's a costume. He's dressing you up like a doll. First the hotel room, now this. What's next? He picks what you eat." Elena thought about the welcome folder she'd found on the desk, the one with a detailed meal plan scheduled down to the calorie, organic, hormone-free, optimized for fertility. She decided not to mention it. "I can handle this, Maya." "Can you?" "Because the Elena I know wouldn't let some man tell her what to wear. The Elena I know once threw a drink in a guy's face for calling her sweetheart. The Elena you know didn't have a brother dying in a hospital bed." Silence, heavy and sharp. "That's not fair," Maya said quietly. "None of this is fair." Elena sat on the edge of the bed, the dress pooling in her lap like a white flag. "But I'm here now. The contract is signed. The money transfers when I confirm pregnancy. All I have to do is get through this. Get through this, like it's a flu, like it's a bad haircut." Maya's voice cracked. "You're having a stranger's baby, Elena. A stranger who looks at you like you're something to own. You haven't even met him. I don't need to meet him. I've read about men like him. Hell, I've dated men like him, just with smaller bank accounts and cheaper suits. They're all the same. They take and take until there's nothing left, and then they act surprised when you're empty." Elena closed her eyes. The smell of sandalwood had followed her here, embedded in the walls, the furniture, the very air she breathed. She wondered if she'd ever be able to smell it again without thinking of pale gray eyes and a mouth that never quite smiled. "I have to go," she said. "I need to get ready for dinner." "Elena, I'll call you tomorrow. I promise." She hung up before Maya could argue, before her best friend could say the things Elena was already thinking but couldn't afford to feel. The bathroom was bigger than her bedroom back home, a marble tub deep enough to drown in, a shower with more settings than her TV. She caught her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Same dark hair, same amber eyes, same beauty mark below the left one. But something had shifted. Something in the set of her jaw, the tension in her shoulders. She looked like a woman walking into battle. Maybe she was. She showered with products that smelled like jasmine and vanilla, wrapped herself in a robe softer than anything she'd ever owned, and stood before the dress like it was an enemy to be conquered. Just fabric, she told herself. Just thread and silk and someone else's expectations. She put it on. The mirror showed her a stranger. The white silk clung to her curves like it had been sewn onto her body, the backless design leaving her spine exposed, vulnerable. Her mother's pendant looked cheap against all that elegance, a tarnished reminder of who she really was. She almost took it off, almost tucked it away in her suitcase where it couldn't clash with the fantasy. Instead, she pressed it against her chest and left it exactly where it was. At precisely 8 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Elena expected a staff member, a faceless escort to lead her to wherever Damien waited. She did not expect Damien himself. He stood in the hallway wearing black on black, his suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms roped with muscle. His hair was slightly less perfect than the night before, a few dark strands falling across his forehead like cracks in his armor. And his eyes, those winter-pale eyes, traveled down her body with an intensity that made her feel more naked than the dress already did. "White suits you," he said. "You would know. You picked it." Something flickered across his face. Amusement? Irritation? Both? "You kept the necklace." Her hand flew to the pendant instinctively. "It was my mother's." "I know." He said it simply, like it was obvious, like he'd researched every detail of her life before selecting her for this arrangement. The thought should have horrified her. Instead, it settled into her bones with a strange, cold certainty. Of course he knew. Damien Ashford didn't leave anything to chance. "Shall we?" He offered his arm like this was a date, like they were normal people doing normal things. Elena hesitated. Touching him felt like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But the contract was signed. The lines had already been obliterated. She took his arm. His body was warm through the thin fabric of his shirt, and she could feel the tension coiled beneath his skin, a barely contained energy that hummed against her fingertips. He smelled like sandalwood again, but this close, she caught something else underneath, something raw and human that didn't match the polished exterior. They walked in silence through corridors she was beginning to memorize, past staff who looked through them like they didn't exist, into an elevator that required a key card she didn't have. Up, 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 until the doors opened onto a rooftop she hadn't known existed. The city sprawled beneath them, a universe of lights and shadows. A table had been set near the edge, intimate and impossible, candles flickering against the wind. No other guests, no staff in sight, just the two of them suspended above the world. "You own this hotel," Elena said. Not a question. "I own several hotels. This one is my favorite." "Because it's the most expensive?" "Because it's the most private." He pulled out her chair, and she sat, feeling the weight of his gaze on the bare skin of her back. "Privacy is the only luxury that matters, Miss Vance. Everything else can be bought by anyone with enough money. But true invisibility, that requires power. And you have power. I have enough." Food appeared, though she hadn't seen anyone bring it. Course after course, each more exquisite than the last. She ate mechanically, barely tasting any of it, too aware of the man across from her. He watched her more than he ate, his own plate barely touched. "You're staring," Elena said finally. "I'm observing." "There's a difference?" "Staring is passive. Observation is active. I'm learning you, Elena. Your tells, your patterns. The way you hold your fork like a weapon. The way you refuse to look at me for more than 3 seconds at a time." She forced herself to meet his eyes, held them for 5 seconds. 10. His pupils dilated slightly, a reaction he couldn't control, and Elena felt a surge of something dangerous. Power. She had power here too, even if it was small. "What have you learned?" she asked. "That you're afraid of me." but not as afraid as you pretend to be. I'm not afraid of you. No? He leaned forward, closing the distance between them. The candlelight turned his face into angles and shadows, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Then why does your pulse jump every time I say your name? Why do your hands shake when I get too close? Why, Elena, do you keep looking at my mouth? She hadn't realized she was. She forced her gaze back to his eyes, cheeks burning. You don't know me, she said. You've read files, background checks, medical records, but you don't know me. Then tell me. Why? Because I want to know. He said it simply, without the calculation she'd come to expect. For a moment, just a moment, he looked almost vulnerable. I want to know who you are when you're not performing for me, when you're not trying to survive. I want to know what you dream about, what you fear, what makes you laugh. Elena's throat tightened. This wasn't in the contract. This wasn't part of the arrangement. She was supposed to be a vessel, a means to an end. He wasn't supposed to look at her like she was something precious, something worth knowing. My brother used to make me laugh, she heard herself say. Before he got sick, he did these terrible impressions of celebrities, just awful. But he committed so fully, you know? Like he believed he actually was Brad Pitt or Morgan Freeman. I haven't laughed like that in 2 years. Damien was silent, watching her. I dream about drowning, she continued, unsure why she was telling him this, unable to stop. I'm in water, and I can see the surface, but every time I swim toward it, it gets farther away. I wake up gasping. It started when my mom died. Got worse when Johnny got diagnosed. And what do you fear? Elena looked at him. This man who had bought her, who controlled her environment and her meals and even the clothes on her body. This man with eyes like ice and hands that probably destroyed as easily as they built. I fear, she said slowly, that I'm going to lose myself in this. That I'm going to become exactly what you want me to be, and when this is over, I won't remember who I was before. The words hung between them, too honest, too raw. Elena wanted to take them back, wanted to rebuild the walls she'd spent years constructing. But Damien just looked at her with something that might have been recognition. Like he knew exactly what it felt like to lose yourself. Like he was already lost and had been for a long time. I won't let that happen, he said quietly. You can't promise that. I can promise to try. He reached across the table, and before she could pull away, his fingers brushed against hers. Just a touch, barely there, but it burned through her like wildfire. This arrangement, he said, it's going to change. I can feel it. You're not what I expected, Elena Vance. And I think perhaps I'm not what you expected either. She should have pulled away, should have reminded him of the contract, the boundaries, the clear transactional nature of their relationship. Instead, she let his fingers rest against hers and felt the last of her certainty crumble into dust. Her phone buzzed in her clutch, Maya's name on the screen. Elena didn't answer. She wasn't ready to explain that the monster she'd made a deal with might not be a monster at all. That beneath the control and the power and the carefully constructed walls, Damien Ashford might be something far more dangerous than a villain. He might be human. And humans, Elena knew better than anyone, were capable of breaking you in ways that monsters never could. 3 weeks. 21 days of white silk and sandalwood, of dinners on rooftops and breakfasts delivered on silver trays. 21 days of Damien Ashford watching her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, touching her in ways that meant nothing and everything at once. A hand on her lower back, fingers brushing hair from her face. The ghost of contact that left her skin burning long after he'd gone. They hadn't slept together yet. The contract specified artificial insemination, clinical and cold. But every time Elena mentioned scheduling the procedure, Damien changed the subject. Deflected with questions about her childhood, her favorite books, the dreams she'd told him about that first night. Like he was collecting pieces of her, hoarding them away for some purpose she couldn't understand. It should have felt like a reprieve. Instead, it felt like drowning in slow motion. Maya arrived on a Thursday exactly 3 weeks after Elena had checked into her gilded cage. The lobby staff looked at her mismatched earrings and vintage band tee like she'd wandered in from another planet. But Maya just smiled her biggest smile and asked where she could find her girl who'd been kidnapped by a billionaire with a breeding kink. Elena heard her before she saw her. That laugh, loud and unapologetic, echoing through the marble halls. She ran toward the sound like it was oxygen. And then Maya was there, arms wrapped around her so tight she couldn't breathe. "You smell like rich people," Maya said into her hair. "Like money laundering and tax evasion." "I missed you too." They pulled apart, and Maya held her at arm's length, studying her with those dark eyes that saw everything. "You look different." "I'm eating better. The meal plan here is—" "That's not what I mean." Maya's gaze sharpened. "You look soft. Around the edges, like someone's been sanding down your defenses." Elena opened her mouth to argue, but Maya was already moving, pulling her toward the elevator. "Show me this prison cell of yours. I need to see how the other half lives before I judge you for enjoying it." The suite impressed even Maya, though she tried to hide it. She ran her fingers along the silk curtains, bounced on the bed, opened every cabinet in the bathroom with increasing disbelief. "This is obscene," she announced finally, sprawling across the couch like she owned it. "I hate it. I want to live here forever. You can visit any time." "Can I?" "Because your text messages have gotten real sparse, Elena. Real vague. Everything's fine and don't worry. And my personal favorite, I'll explain later." "When is later?" "When you've already had this man's baby and forgotten what freedom feels like." Elena sank into the chair across from her. The view behind her showed the city in afternoon light, beautiful and distant. Another world she no longer belonged to. "It's complicated," she said. "Uncomplicate it. He's not what I thought he'd be." Maya sat up slowly, all the playfulness draining from her face. "What does that mean?" "It means—" Elena struggled for words that wouldn't sound insane. "He talks to me, Maya. Really talks. Asks questions like he actually wants to know the answers. He remembered that I mentioned liking jasmine tea once, just once in passing, and now it's delivered to my room every morning. He noticed I fidget with my necklace when I'm anxious, and he started doing this thing where he touches my hand to calm me down, and it actually works, and I don't know what to do with any of this." Maya stared at her like she'd announced she was joining a cult, which Elena supposed wasn't far off. "Elena, baby, sweetheart." Maya leaned forward, elbows on knees. "That's not him being nice. That's him learning your patterns, your vulnerabilities, your weak spots. That's what predators do before they strike. He's not a predator. He literally bought you. He's paying me. There's a difference." "Is there?" Maya's voice rose. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're living in his hotel, wearing clothes he picked out, eating food he approved, and now you're defending him to me like I'm the one who's crazy. Do you hear yourself?" Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Anger, shame. The uncomfortable awareness that Maya was saying everything she'd thought herself in the dark hours of the night, when Damien's cologne faded and she was left alone with her choices. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Then make me understand. He's lonely." The words fell out before she could stop them. "I know how that sounds. Poor little rich boy in his penthouse prison. But Maya, you should see the way he looks at me sometimes. Like I'm the first real thing he's touched in years. Like he's been holding his breath and I'm the first clean air he's found." Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentler, but no less worried. "Lonely people can still hurt you. Sometimes they hurt you worse, because they don't know how to love without consuming. I know. Do you? Because right now you sound like every woman who's ever said he's different with me right before everything fell apart." Elena closed her eyes. Her mother's pendant pressed against her collarbone like a warning. "I'm not falling for him. Elena, I'm not." Maya crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. Her mismatched earrings caught the light. One silver moon, One gold star. Look at me. Please. Elena opened her eyes. You are the strongest person I know, Maya said quietly. You survived losing your mom. You worked 3 jobs while everyone else was partying through their 20s. You held your brother's hand through every diagnosis, every setback, every moment of terror. You are not weak. I don't feel strong. That's exactly when you need to be. Maya squeezed her hands. This man, Damien, whoever he is beneath the suits and the money, he's playing a game you don't know the rules to. And you're starting to care about him, which means you're starting to lose. What if I want to lose? The question hung between them, terrible and honest. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She blinked back furiously. Then I'll be here when it breaks you, just like I've always been. But I need you to promise me something. What? Don't disappear into him. Don't let his world become yours completely. Keep one piece of yourself that's just yours. Something he can't buy or learn or take. Can you do that? Elena thought about the white dresses multiplying in her closet, the jasmine tea every morning, the way she'd started checking her appearance before dinner, hoping to see that flicker of appreciation in his eyes. I'll try, she said. Maya pulled her into another hug, fierce and desperate. That's all I'm asking. They spent the afternoon like old times, Maya raiding the minibar while Elena laughed at her running commentary on every absurd luxury. For a few hours, she almost felt normal. Almost forgot the arrangement, the contract, the man whose presence lingered in every corner of the suite. Then there was a knock at the door. Maya went rigid. Elena's heart lurched into her throat. That'll be him, she said. How do you know? Because he always comes at 6. Maya's eyebrows shot up. Always? Elena didn't have time to explain. She was already at the door, already turning the handle, already feeling that familiar twist in her stomach that came every time she faced him. Damien stood in the hallway, and for once he wasn't alone. A woman Elena didn't recognize hovered behind him, severe and polished, holding a garment bag like it contained nuclear codes. Elena. His eyes found hers immediately, warming by degrees. Then they shifted to Maya, still sprawled on the couch and cooled to ice. I see you have company. My friend Maya, the one I told you about. The one with the pepper spray. Maya stood, crossing her arms. The one who'll use it if you give me a reason. Damien's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. I've heard a lot about you, Miss Santos. Wish I could say the same, but Elena's been real cagey about the details. Maya walked forward until she was standing between them, all 5 feet 4 inches of protective fury. What exactly are your intentions with my best friend? Maya, Elena warned. No, it's a fair question. Damien tilted his head, studying Maya with something that might have been respect. My intentions are outlined in the contract Miss Vance signed. I intend to fulfill my end of the arrangement and ensure she's comfortable until its completion. Comfortable? Maya made the word sound like an insult. She's not a houseplant. She's a person. I'm aware. Are you? Because from what I can see, you've built her a very pretty cage and convinced her the bars are just decoration. The silence stretched between them, taut and dangerous. Damien's jaw tightened, that familiar tell, but his voice remained steady. Miss Santos, I understand your concern for your friend. It speaks well of your character. But Elena made a choice to be here. A choice I did not coerce. A choice she can unmake at any time, with full compensation, as per Section 31 of our agreement. She can leave? Maya looked at Elena. You can just leave? Elena nodded slowly. The exit clause. If I want to end the arrangement before pregnancy, I still receive a portion of the payment, enough to cover Johnny's surgery. Then why are you still here? It was the question Elena had been asking herself every night. Why didn't she take the money and run? Why did she keep putting on the white dresses, showing up to dinners, letting him peel back her layers, one careful question at a time? She looked at Damien. Really looked. At the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides, the flash of something raw behind his frozen eyes. He was scared, she realized. Scared that she would leave, scared that Maya would convince her to go. And there it was, the answer she'd been avoiding. She stayed because somewhere along the line, his fear had become hers. His loneliness had become hers. She stayed because when she looked at Damien Ashford, she didn't just see a man who'd bought her. She saw a man who was drowning too. "I stay," Elena said quietly, "because I choose to." Maya's face crumpled. Damien's shoulders dropped imperceptibly, and in the space between them, something shifted, something that couldn't be unsigned or unsaid. The woman with the garment bag stepped forward, clearing her throat. "Mr. Ashford, the appointment, cancel it." Damien's eyes never left Elena's. "I'll stay for dinner tonight." "Sir, the board—" "I said cancel it." The woman retreated. Maya watched the exchange with narrowed eyes. "Three of us, then," Maya said flatly. "Cozy. Miss Santos, you're welcome to stay as long as you like." Damien finally looked away from Elena, turning his attention to her friend with an expression Elena couldn't read. "I have a feeling you and I have much to discuss." Maya smiled, but it was all teeth. "Oh, we definitely do." And as Elena watched the two most important people in her strange new life circle each other like wolves, she realized that whatever came next, nothing would ever be simple again. The game had changed, and for the first time she wasn't sure who was winning. Dinner was a battlefield dressed in white linen and crystal stemware. The private dining room felt smaller with 3 people, the air thick with unspoken accusations and careful words. Damien sat at the head of the table like a king holding court, Maya to his left like an assassin waiting for the perfect moment, and Elena between them, caught in a crossfire she'd somehow orchestrated. The first course arrived in silence. Some kind of seared fish with foam and microgreens that probably cost more than Maya's rent. Maya poked at it with her fork like it might bite back. "So," she said, not bothering to swallow her first bite before speaking. "Let's skip the small talk. How many women have you done this with before, Elena?" Damien set down his wine glass with deliberate precision. "Define this. The whole buying a woman to have your baby thing. Is there a punch card? Does she get a free smoothie after the 10th insemination?" "Maya." Elena's voice was sharp, but Maya didn't even flinch. "It's a fair question. You want to know too. I can see it in your face." Elena hated that she was right. Damien was quiet for a long moment, studying Maya with an expression that had shifted from irritation to something closer to assessment, like he was recalculating her threat level in real time. "2, he said finally. "Before Elena, there were 2. Elena's stomach dropped. She hadn't asked, hadn't wanted to know. But now the number hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. "What happened to them?" Maya pressed. "The arrangements ended. They were compensated and returned to their lives. Just like that, no messy attachments, no inconvenient feelings." Damien's jaw tightened. That tell again. The arrangements were purely transactional. They understood the terms, as does Elena. "See, that's the thing." Maya leaned back in her chair, one arm draped over the back like she was settling in for a long interrogation. "I don't think Elena understands the terms anymore. I think you've been blurring the lines on purpose. The romantic dinners, the hand-touching, the way you look at her like she's the sun and you've been living in the dark. That's not transactional, Mr. Ashford. That's seduction." The word landed like a slap. Elena watched Damien's face for any crack in the mask, any admission that Maya had struck a nerve. What she saw instead made her breath catch. He didn't deny it. "You're protective of her," Damien said, and his voice had lost its edge. Softer now, almost vulnerable. "That's admirable. She deserves people who protect her. She deserves better than being a rich man's incubator." "Yes, she does." Maya faltered, clearly not expecting agreement. "Then why are you doing this?" Damien looked at Elena. Really looked. The way he did when they were alone. When the walls came down and she glimpsed something human beneath the control. "Because I'm selfish." because I saw her file on my desk, just another candidate in a stack of candidates, and something in her eyes made me stop, made me want. I haven't wanted anything in a very long time, Miss Santos. I'd forgotten what it felt like. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Elena's hands were trembling. She pressed them flat against the table, feeling the cool linen against her palms, grounding herself in something solid. Damien. He turned to her, and the rest of the room seemed to fall away. Yes? The other two women. Why did the arrangements really end? A shadow crossed his face. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he reached for his wine, took a long sip, and set the glass down with a sound like finality. The first couldn't conceive, medical incompatibility. She was relieved, I think. Left with her payment and never looked back. He paused, and something dark flickered in his eyes. The second conceived. 8 weeks in, she terminated the pregnancy without telling me. Took the money and disappeared. Elena felt the air leave her lungs. She terminated. I found out through my medical contacts 3 days after the fact. His voice was flat, controlled, but his hands had curled into fists on the table. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because you asked, and because I've learned that secrets between us serve no purpose. Maya was silent for once, her sharp edges momentarily dulled by the weight of what he'd revealed. Did you love her? Elena asked, and she didn't know why the question mattered so much, only that it did. Damien's eyes found hers. No, I didn't know her. That was the problem. I treated the arrangement like a business deal, and she treated it like an escape hatch. We were both wrong. And with me? The question hung between them, dangerous and necessary. Damien stood slowly, moving around the table until he was standing beside her. Maya tensed, ready to intervene, but he only knelt down, bringing himself to Elena's eye level. This close, she could see the faint lines around his eyes, the exhaustion he hid so well, the vulnerability he'd buried so deep it had almost calcified. With you, he said quietly. I've been trying to do things differently. To know you before I ask you to carry my child. To understand what you need, what you fear, what makes you who you are. He reached up and his fingers brushed the pendant at her throat, the small silver key that was the only thing she'd kept from her old life. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things I can't undo, made choices I can't unmake. But when I look at you, I want to be better. And that terrifies me more than anything. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Why does it terrify you? Because wanting makes you weak. Caring makes you vulnerable. And I've spent my entire life building walls against both. His hand dropped from her pendant to rest on the table beside hers. Not touching, just close. You've been dismantling those walls since the moment you walked into that dining room in your funeral dress and told me to say please. Maya made a sound somewhere between a scoff and a sob. Jesus Christ. Elena couldn't look away from him. This man who'd bought her, who controlled her environment and her meals and the clothes on her body. This man who knelt before her now like a penitent seeking absolution. I don't know how to trust you, she whispered. I know. I don't know if this is real or if it's just another way to control me. I know that too. Then what do you want me to do? Damien rose slowly, and for a moment his hand hovered over hers, trembling slightly. Then he pulled back, putting distance between them with visible effort. I want you to choose, he said. Not tonight. Not because I'm asking. But when you're ready, I want you to look at everything I am, everything I've done, and decide if you can live with it. If you can build something with me that isn't a contract or an arrangement. Something real. And if I can't, then you take the exit clause, you take the money, you save your brother, and you never have to see me again. He said it like it would destroy him, like the possibility of her leaving was a wound he'd already accepted. Maya stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need air. Elena, come with me. Elena looked between them, torn in ways she couldn't articulate. But Maya's hand was already on her arm, pulling her up, pulling her away. 5 minutes, Maya said to Damien. Then we're finishing this conversation. She didn't wait for his response, just dragged Elena out onto the balcony where the night air hit them like a wake-up call. The city sparkled below, indifferent to the chaos unfolding above it. Okay. Maya spun to face her, hands on her hips. What the hell was that? I don't know. Elena, the man just basically confessed his love for you in front of a seafood appetizer. The man who bought you. The man with the control issues and the creepy file collection and the 2 previous women who either couldn't conceive or ran away. And you're standing there looking like you want to kiss him. I don't want to kiss him. Liar. Elena pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to force clarity into a brain that had turned to static. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was supposed to be simple, transactional. I give him a baby, he gives me money, everyone moves on. But he keeps looking at me like I matter, like I'm more than a uterus with a price tag. And I know that could be manipulation. That could be him playing a long game I can't see. But Maya, she dropped her hands, meeting her best friend's eyes. What if it's not? What if he's just as lost as I am? Maya stared at her for a long moment. The wind caught her wild curls, sending them dancing around her face like a dark halo. You're falling for him. It wasn't a question. Elena didn't deny it. Oh, girl. Maya pulled her into a hug, fierce and desperate. You're falling for him, and you don't even know who he really is. I know enough. Do you? Because I just watched a man admit that his last surrogate terminated a pregnancy and fled, and you didn't even ask why. You didn't ask what he did to make her run. You just looked at him with those big eyes and let him touch your necklace like it was romantic. Elena pulled back, something cold settling in her chest. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to know more. I'm saying there's a story he's not telling you, and before you dive headfirst into whatever this is, you need to find out what happened to those other women. Really happened. He told us his version. Rich men always have a version, Elena. It's called PR. Maya gripped her shoulders. Let me dig. Let me find out who they were, where they are now. If everything checks out, I'll back off. I'll accept that maybe, somehow, this isn't the disaster it looks like. But if there's something he's hiding... Elena thought about the exit clause. The money sitting there like a safety net she hadn't wanted to need. Okay, she said finally. Dig. But Maya... I know. Be careful. Maya's smile was sad. I'm always careful. It's you I'm worried about. They went back inside. Damien stood at the window, his back to them, silhouetted against the city lights like a figure in a noir film. He didn't turn when they entered, but his voice carried clear across the room. Your friend doesn't trust me. No, Elena agreed. She doesn't. And you? Elena walked toward him slowly, each step a choice, until she was standing close enough to touch. His cologne wrapped around her, sandalwood and smoke, familiar now in ways that made her ache. I want to, she said honestly, but wanting isn't the same as doing. He turned then, and his face was stripped bare of every mask she'd seen him wear. Just a man. Just eyes full of something that looked terrifyingly like hope. Then let me earn it, he said. However long it takes, whatever I have to do. Let me show you who I really am. Elena thought about Maya's warning, about the women who came before, about the contract that still bound her to this man and this arrangement. Then she thought about drowning, about the dream she'd had for years, swimming toward a surface she could never reach. What if Damien wasn't pulling her under? What if he was drowning too and they could learn to breathe together? The procedure, she said quietly. The insemination. I want to schedule it. Something flickered across his face. Surprise. Then something warmer. Are you sure? No, but I'm tired of waiting for certainty that's never going to come. She reached up, her fingers finding the lapel of his jacket, smoothing the fabric that didn't need smoothing. I want to move forward. Whatever that means. Damien covered her hand with his, pressing it against his chest where she could feel his heart beating, fast and uneven. "Together," he said. It sounded like a vow. "Together," she repeated. And somewhere behind them, Maya watched with worried eyes, already planning her investigation, already dreading what she might find, because Maya Santos had seen a lot of things in her 28 years. And she'd never seen her best friend look at anyone the way Elena was looking at Damien Ashford. Like he was salvation. Like he was ruin. Like he might be both. 6 weeks after the procedure, Elena stared at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test and felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Positive. She was carrying Damien Ashford's child. The contract was fulfilled. The money would transfer. Johnny would get his surgery. She should have felt relief, victory, closure. Instead, she felt the walls of the hotel suite closing in around her, beautiful and suffocating in equal measure. Her phone rang. Maya's name flashed on the screen, and something in Elena's chest clenched. They'd spoken every day since that dinner, but Maya had been evasive, distracted, working on something she wouldn't discuss until she was sure. "I found her," Maya said the moment Elena answered. No greeting, no preamble. "The second one, the woman who terminated the pregnancy. Her name is Rebecca Chen, and she's willing to talk." Elena sat down heavily on the bed, the pregnancy test still clutched in her hand. "What did she say?" "Not over the phone." "Can you get out of the hotel? Meet me somewhere he doesn't control?" Elena looked around the suite, at the cameras she'd never been able to find but knew existed, at the walls that had become both sanctuary and prison. "I don't know." "Try. There's a coffee shop 3 blocks south, neutral ground. 2 hours." The line went dead. Elena stared at the pregnancy test, at the 2 lines that had just changed everything. Then she grabbed her coat and walked out the door. The coffee shop was small and crowded and wonderfully ordinary. Elena spotted Maya in a corner booth hunched over a laptop, mismatched earrings catching the fluorescent light. Across from her sat a woman Elena didn't recognize, delicate and hollow-eyed, nursing a cup of tea like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Maya stood when she saw Elena, pulling her into a hug that lasted longer than usual. "You came. I came." They sat. The woman across the table looked up, and Elena saw something in her eyes that made her blood run cold. Recognition. Fear. The haunted look of someone who'd seen the other side of a fairy tale and barely survived. "Rebecca Chen," Maya said quietly. "This is Elena. The one I told you about." Rebecca's hands trembled around her cup. She was beautiful in a fragile way, like glass that had been shattered and glued back together, the cracks still visible beneath the surface. "You're pregnant," Rebecca said. Not a question. Elena's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. "How did you—" "You have the look. I had it too once." Rebecca set down her tea, folding her hands on the table like she was bracing for impact. "Maya said you wanted to know what really happened. Why I ran. Damien told me you terminated the pregnancy, took the money and disappeared." A bitter laugh escaped Rebecca's lips. "Of course he did. That's the version that makes him the victim, the version where he's the wronged party and I'm the villain." She met Elena's eyes. "Do you want to hear the truth?" Elena thought about Damien, about his hands on her face, his voice in the dark, the way he looked at her like she was everything he'd never allowed himself to want. "Yes," she said. Rebecca took a breath. "I was 24 when I signed the contract, fresh out of law school, drowning in student loans, desperate for a way out. The offer seemed too good to be true. $700,000 for 9 months of my life. I thought I could handle it." She paused, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. At first it was exactly what he promised. Clinical, professional. I lived in a different hotel, one of his properties in the city. Saw him maybe once a week for check-ins. It was cold, but it was manageable. Her voice dropped. Then I got pregnant. Elena's throat tightened. What changed? Everything. Rebecca's eyes went distant. lost in a memory she'd clearly tried to bury. The moment those test results came back positive, something shifted in him. He started showing up more, calling more, wanting to know where I was every hour of every day. He moved me into his penthouse, said it was for my safety, for the baby's safety, but it didn't feel safe. It felt like drowning. Maya reached across the table, squeezing Rebecca's hand. He started picking my clothes, Rebecca continued, controlling what I ate, who I talked to. My friends stopped hearing from me because every time I tried to call them, he was there listening. He said it was because he cared, because he wanted to protect me, but the way he looked at me. She shuddered. It wasn't love. It was obsession. Like I was a vessel carrying something precious and he couldn't stand the thought of anyone else touching what was his. Elena felt sick. Every word Rebecca spoke was a mirror held up to her own experience, reflecting back the things she'd told herself were romantic, were special, were different. "What happened?" she whispered. Rebecca's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks, silent and devastating. I tried to leave. Packed a bag in the middle of the night, called a cab, got as far as the lobby. He was waiting for me. Not angry, just disappointed, like I was a child who'd misbehaved. He took my phone, my purse, said I was confused, that the pregnancy hormones were making me irrational. He had a doctor give me something to calm down. I woke up back in the penthouse with no memory of how I got there. Maya made a sound of pure rage. Elena couldn't speak at all. I knew then that I had to get out. Not just leave, but disappear. Make myself worthless to him. Rebecca's voice hardened. So I terminated the pregnancy, found a clinic he didn't control, paid cash, told no one until it was done. And he let you go? He didn't have a choice. Without the baby, I was nothing to him. Just a broken contract, a failed investment. Rebecca laughed, hollow and sharp. He paid me off, made me sign an NDA, threatened to destroy me if I ever spoke about what happened. I spent 2 years in therapy trying to feel human again. The coffee shop hummed with ordinary life around them. People ordering lattes, keyboards clicking, normal sounds from a normal world that Elena no longer belonged to. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked. Rebecca looked at her with something like pity. "Because Maya showed me your picture, and I recognized the look in your eyes. The same look I had when I thought he loved me, when I thought I was special." She reached across the table, gripping Elena's hand. "You're not special to him. You're just the latest version of the same obsession. And if you don't get out now, while you still can, you'll end up like me. Or worse." Elena pulled her hand back. Her mind was racing, trying to reconcile the man Rebecca described with the man who'd knelt before her and asked to earn her trust. "He's different with me," she heard herself say. Rebecca's face crumpled. "That's exactly what I said." Maya leaned forward. "Elena, listen to me. I know this is hard. I know you have feelings for him. But you need to see the pattern here. The control disguised as care. The isolation disguised as protection. He's not loving you. He's collecting you. I'm pregnant." The words fell out like stones. "The procedure worked. I found out this morning." Silence. Maya's face went pale. "Oh, Elena." Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. "Then you need to decide now, before it's too late. Before he finds out and the cage door locks for good." Elena stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. "I need to think. I need—" Her phone buzzed. Damien's name on the screen. "Where are you?" 3 words. Simple. Innocent. Terrifying. "He's tracking me," Elena said numbly. "He always knows where I am." Maya was on her feet in an instant. "Then we go, now. My apartment. He doesn't know where I live. I can't just—" "You can." Maya grabbed her hands, forcing Elena to look at her. "Elena, listen to me. You have the exit clause, you have the partial payment, it's enough for Johnny's surgery. You don't need him anymore. You can walk away right now and never look back." But even as Maya spoke, Elena felt the weight of everything she'd built with Damien pressing down on her. The dinners, the confessions, the way he'd shown her his scars, literal and metaphorical, and asked her to see him anyway. Had it all been a lie? A performance designed to trap her? Or was there something real buried beneath the control, something worth fighting for? Her phone buzzed again. Elena. Answer me. Then again. I know you're not in the hotel. Come home. Please. That word. Please. The one she'd made him learn. Elena. Maya's voice was urgent. We need to go. But Elena was already moving, not toward the door, toward something else. A decision that had been building since the moment she signed that contract in a candlelit room with the smell of sandalwood in the air. No, she said. Maya froze. What? I'm not running. Elena turned to face them both. Rebecca with her haunted eyes, Maya with her desperate love. I'm not running because that's what he expects. That's what the last one did. That's what everyone does when they see the monster behind the mask. Elena, he is a monster. Maybe. Elena's voice was steady now, steadier than it had been in weeks. Or maybe he's a man who's never been challenged, never been forced to choose between control and connection, never had someone look him in the eye and say, I see what you are, and I'm not afraid. Rebecca shook her head. You don't understand what you're dealing with. No, I think you don't understand what I'm dealing with. Elena pulled out her phone, staring at Damien's messages. You ran, Rebecca. You had every right to run. But I'm not you. I'm not going to let fear make this choice for me. She typed a response. I'll be back in an hour. We need to talk. Then she looked at Maya, at her best friend who had done everything to protect her, and felt tears burn in her eyes. I love you, Elena said, and I hear you, but I have to see this through. I have to know for sure. Maya looked like she wanted to argue, to scream, to throw Elena over her shoulder and carry her to safety. Instead, she pulled her into a hug so tight it hurt. If you're not out of that hotel by midnight, Maya whispered, I'm calling every journalist, every cop, every person I've ever met. I will burn his world to the ground. I know you will. I love you too, you stubborn idiot. Elena walked out of the coffee shop and into the gray afternoon light. Her hand rested on her stomach, on the life growing inside her, on the future she hadn't planned, but couldn't deny. Damien was waiting when she returned. Not in the suite. In the lobby. Standing by the entrance like he'd been there for hours, his usual composure cracked, hair disheveled, eyes wild with something that looked like panic. Where were you? He moved toward her, hands reaching for her face, her shoulders, like he needed to confirm she was real. I couldn't find you. The GPS said you were in the building, but you weren't in the suite, and you thought I ran. Elena didn't pull away from his touch, but she didn't lean into it either. Like the others. He went still. Elena, I met Rebecca Chen today. The color drained from his face. For a long moment he didn't speak, didn't move. Just stood there stripped bare by 4 words. She told you, he said finally. She told me everything. Then, you know. His voice cracked. You know what I am. Elena looked at him. Really looked. At the man who'd bought her, controlled her, seduced her with vulnerability and sandalwood and carefully crafted confessions. At the man who stood before her now with terror in his eyes, not because she might expose him, but because she might leave. I know what you were, she said slowly. I know what you did to her. The isolation, the control, the way you made her feel like a prisoner in a palace. Yes, I know you could do the same to me. That you've already started. Yes. It came out broken, a confession and a surrender. But I also know you let me negotiate, you let Maya visit. You told me about the exit clause when you didn't have to. Elena stepped closer, close enough to see the tears gathering in his eyes. You're trying to be different. I can see it. The question is whether trying is enough. Damien's hands trembled as they framed her face. I don't know how to love without holding on too tight. I don't know how to want without possessing. I've spent my whole life building walls and you came in and demolished them and now I'm standing in the rubble trying to figure out who I am without them. That's not an excuse? No, it's not. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her in like she was oxygen. But it's the truth, and I promised you truth. Elena closed her eyes, her mother's pendant pressed against her chest, warm from her skin, grounding her in who she was before all of this. I'm pregnant, she said. She felt him stop breathing. The test was positive this morning. I'm carrying your child. When she opened her eyes, Damien was crying. Not the controlled, elegant tears of a man who'd practiced vulnerability. Ugly crying. Raw and desperate, and entirely human. Elena. Her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer. Elena, I'm not done. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I'm not running. I'm not leaving. But things are going to change. Starting now. Anything. Whatever you need. I need the GPS tracker removed from my phone, all of them. He nodded immediately. Done. I need Maya to have unrestricted access. No supervision, no surveillance. Done. I need to be a partner in this, not a possession. I make decisions about my body, my schedule, my life. You can suggest, you can ask, but you don't control. He swallowed hard, and she could see how much it cost him, how every instinct screamed against letting go. Done, he said anyway. Elena reached up, her fingers brushing the scar through his eyebrow. And I need you to get help. Therapy. Someone who can teach you how to love without suffocating. Because I can't fix you, Damien. I can only choose whether to stay while you fix yourself. His breath shuddered. You'd stay? After everything Rebecca told you? I'm choosing to stay. Elena's voice was firm. Not because I trust you. Not because I believe you've changed. But because I see who you could be. And I want to know if you have the courage to become him. Damien pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to sand. His tears wet her hair. His heart pounded against hers. I'll try, he whispered. I'll spend every day trying. That's all I'm asking. They stood there in the hotel lobby, two broken people clinging to the possibility of something whole. The staff moved around them like ghosts, trained to see nothing. The city hummed outside, indifferent to the war that had just ended in a truce. Elena's phone buzzed. Maya. Well? She typed back with one hand, the other still wrapped around Damien. I'm staying, but things are different now. I'll explain everything tomorrow. The response came immediately. You better. And tell that man if he hurts you, I'm still stabbing him with my earring. Elena smiled, the first real smile in what felt like weeks. She looked up at Damien, at the man who'd wanted to own her and was learning painfully to simply love her instead. Take me upstairs, she said. To the suite? To our home? She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. We have a lot of work to do. Might as well start now. They walked to the elevator together. When the doors closed, Damien pressed the button for the penthouse, then turned to her with something new in his eyes. Not possession, not obsession. Hope. I don't deserve you, he said quietly. No, Elena agreed, you don't. But I'm giving you the chance to earn it anyway. The elevator rose, carrying them toward an uncertain future. A baby growing inside her. A man learning to unclench his fists. A best friend ready to burn down the world if needed. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a contract. It was something far more terrifying. It was a choice. And for the first time since she'd walked into that candlelit dining room in her mother's funeral dress, Elena Vance chose herself.